All right. Hello, I'm Jim Kotzer. I'm the Transportation Division Manager at Arapahoe County, and I'm joined by Carl Packer. He's a Traffic Operations Manager within Public Works, and also Jason Reynolds. He's the current Planning Manager. And we're going to talk about the Parker Triangle area parking, and we have a study to talk about. So if you can go to the next slide, Gary, I'd appreciate it. Also, Gary's in the background running the slideshow. So today we'd like to talk about the 4 square mile neighborhood and also the Parker Triangle area and some unique aspects of that neighborhood. And then we'd like to talk about the Parker Triangle parking study and findings, along with the county's role in the parking regulation of this area and within and throughout the county. At the end, we'd also like to give you an update on the Potter's Church redevelopment and the public park that is going in there. So without further ado, we'll go on to the next slide. Thank you, Gary. So the 4 square mile area is located within unincorporated Arapahoe County, and it covers 2.7 square miles. The general boundaries of this area is on the north side is Mississippi Avenue, on the east side is Dayton Street, south side is Yale Avenue, and then on the west side is Quebec Street. This is a very unique area, and it's surrounded by the city and county of Denver and also by Aurora. Causing the area to be to function geographically as an enclave in unincorporated Arapahoe County. The U.S. Census Bureau had the population projected to be 22,256 in 2018. So this area is very diverse. It has a lot of different types of development, ranging from multifamily housing to single-family housing. Commercial developments are scattered throughout. It also has a component of light industrial close by, and also some larger lots that have a semi-rural feel. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the diverse land uses throughout this area. And this is also a good picture of the area itself, where you see Mississippi on the north, and then those other streets I mentioned on bounding the area. So the land use for this diverse area includes many of those things, and those are captured in those different colors. Within the 4 square mile area is a Parker Triangle, and that's where we're going to focus a little more now on this presentation. So the Parker Triangle is bounded by Mississippi on the north, Dayton on the east, and then the diagonal line that comes through the Parker Triangle, or the hypotenuse, is the Parker Road, which is operated by CDOT. So with respect to the land use in this area, it's very similar to the surrounding parts of the 4 square mile neighborhood. So the conversation we just had is very true to this area as well. Next slide, please. So over the years, we've heard several complaints, and this picture on the right, in a way, captures some of them. But the concerns that we've heard voiced from the neighborhood are the parking of oversized and commercial vehicles, and that's captured here on the right. And with that, we've also heard about safety concerns due to this parking. So sometimes these vehicles are blocking roadways, fire hydrants, and driveways. So we've heard about those things, and then we've also heard about the availability of parking. There's nowhere to park on the street. Aesthetics has also been a concern, and then there's been concerns also with some of these vehicles being parked here. They seem to be out of place, so there's a question that comes to people's mind: what are they doing here? Are they up to any good? So those are some of the concerns we've heard. So the county looked into that. I'm going to turn it over to Carl Packer, who conducted the study. So Carl?
Thanks, Jim. Yes, and the Traffic Operations Center for Arapahoe County did perform a Parker Triangle traffic study with the objectives to take a look at the traffic in 2020 and respond to those citizens' concerns regarding the parking of especially oversized vehicles and the commercial vehicles within the Parker Triangle section of 4 square mile area. So the study does identify current on-street parking usage, type of vehicles, and the use of the parking on the streets, as well as we surveyed any vehicles parked in unsafe or illegal conditions. So the study is right now it's available on the website for all to view the full study, and we're viewing it as a step in the overall discussion involving the management of on-street parking within the parking triangle and 4 square mile neighborhood. Next slide, please. So this is actually the Parker Triangle parking study roads, the actual roads that we surveyed and collected data on. The graphic to the right shows them in pink, and all the roads are classified as collectors with adjacent residential development. They included Valencia Street, Willow Street, Alton Street, Clinton Street, Beeler Street, Iowa Avenue, Mexico Avenue, and Evans Avenue was added at a later point in the study. Next slide, thanks. This slide is part of the Parker Triangle study and actually gives kind of the results of what we saw as expressed as a percentage of the different class of vehicles on each one of the available parking areas. So if we look at the first road in column 1, we see Willow Street, and the vehicle tractor trailer parking utilization, that size vehicle, was 1% of the total linear foot of parking area. And so what that really looked at is if a truck takes 3 parking spaces that a passenger vehicle might, that is represented in that percentage as total parking availability was 1% of that size vehicle. As you can see from the results on this, the available on-street parking is noted by the parking allowed and not restricted by regulatory signs. Of the available parking, the percentage represents that used on average by each of the vehicle classes, and the parking area is not utilized represents areas that are still available for parking. If we take a real quick look at the different totals right there, one column I wanted to note in the results is available parking not utilized, center column, which shows about 70 to 94% there is actually still available for parking, and we'll get to some of those details in a minute here. Next slide, please. Parker Triangle traffic study findings shows that availability of the on-street parking of oversized and commercial vehicles was observed to be low as compared to the passenger vehicles. Often parking of both was concentrated near a development, which suggests it's a convenience issue of the closest parking space. However, parking does not typically impede the movement of traffic. Next slide, please. And we also found regarding the utilization of the roadway cross section, the oversized and commercial vehicles utilizing that on-street parking within the Parker Triangle do not typically block the movement on the collector roadway cross section. The roadways are designed to fit sufficiently wide enough to accommodate a truck in a parking lane. This picture down below kind of gives a driver's view of how we have parking occurring, and you still have your available drive lane through that. Next slide, please. Parker Triangle area study conclusions also determined that on-street parking by oversized commercial vehicles could be described as a quality of life aesthetic issue. Its parking is available to meet the current demand on these roadways. The current parking is safe when not in violation of existing regulations, parked illegally, and typical parking allows for normal street operations. Most of the parking observed by large trucks is legal, and violations have been forwarded to the Sheriff's Office Department for enforcement. If violations of existing parking regulations are observed by residents, please do let the Sheriff's Department know. Next slide, please. The area does have a diverse land use that includes multi-family housing along with the single-family housing and developments with private roadways. And some private road subdivisions have covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And I will transfer the slides over for planning to talk about more of their associated roles. Jason?
All right, thank you. If we go to the next slide. So we will look at what various county divisions and departments can do to help with the parking situation. We'll talk a little bit about engineering, transportation, enforcement, planning, zoning, and finally, what the community's role might be. So on the county side, our engineering division is responsible for plan reviews when developments arrive in the county. Someone's proposing a new development. The engineering division compares the proposal to our public road cross sections and private roadway design standards. And our basic roadway design includes room for on-street parking. Transportation division coordinates with the engineering division and ensures that the roads are following the parking laws that are set by the state of Colorado and our own ordinances. The transportation division can also use a tool such as an overlay district to restrict the use of the right-of-way. And the Sheriff's Department is responsible for enforcement of any of the public or parking regulations. So I'll kick it back to Carl to talk a bit about the Colorado Revised Statutes and their rules regarding parking.
Thanks, Jason. And this is kind of the education of what we were talking previously in the slideshow about the existing regulations on the existing roadway. A lot of people aren't aware of the actual existing laws that are in there, but we do want to bring this forward and kind of let you know from a standpoint of what is in the Colorado Revised Statutes that applies to the parking regulation. So the county roles and regulations in the engineering and the enforcement area, and how the public can actually assist is to be aware of this. Colorado Revised Statutes applies is 42-4-1204, and the highlight that I wanted to put in here is the Department of Transportation, with respect to the highways under its jurisdiction, may place official traffic control devices prohibiting, limiting, or restricting the stopping, standing, of parking of vehicles on any highway where it is determined upon the basis of a traffic investigation or study, and that is the connection to what we're presenting here, that such stopping, standing, or parking is dangerous to those using the highway, or where the stopping, standing, or parking of vehicles would unduly interfere with the free movement of traffic thereon. No person shall stop, stand, or park on any vehicle in violation of the restrictions indicated by such devices. And with that, I'll go into a couple details to look at before. That was an excerpt of the entire section of the CRS. It goes on to talk about no parking areas, and I wanted to highlight a couple things that we should look for and at least be aware of. So in 42-4-1204, stopping, standing, or parking prohibited in specific places, we have experts, or the highlighted portions here say no person shall stop, stand, or park a vehicle except when necessary to avoid conflict with other traffic or in compliance with the directions of a police officer or official traffic control device. And here's the sections that I'll highlight for you, and please read through the entire section yourself. On a sidewalk or within a intersection, on a crosswalk, and then between the safety zones of the adjacent curb within 35 feet of points of the curb immediately opposite the ends of that safety zone. And then I'll go to F that's highlighted here that says on the roadway side of any vehicle stopped or parked at the edge of a curb or street. We have additional ones in there that may be interesting on a railroad track or any controlled access highway. And we'll go to the next slide. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, slide 18, please. So also within that, specifically stating no person shall stand or park on a vehicle, I did want to highlight that section within 5 feet of a public or private driveway, within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, within 20 feet of a crosswalk at an intersection, and within 30 feet of the approach to any flashing beacon or signal, stop sign, yield sign, or traffic control signal located at the side of the roadway. Next slide, please. So moving forward, Jason, I'll pass that back to you.
So if we could go back to slide 19. All right, thank you. So continuing on with the county's role in managing parking, I'll talk a little bit about planning and zoning and part of what we do during case review. First off, we have learned lessons from previous developments. There are examples of developments where the setback from the garage door to the street is only 15 feet. So 15 feet from the curb and gutter to the face of the garage, which for most vehicles means that if you park a vehicle on that driveway, that will overhang the entire sidewalk and may even jut out into the street if you don't push the vehicle all the way up against the garage door. The typical parking stall in a parking lot is 18 feet in length, and in our plan reviews nowadays, we look for that 18 feet of length from the garage door to the property line, and often the sidewalk is a couple of feet beyond the property line, resulting in roughly 20 feet from the garage door to the edge of the sidewalk, allowing somebody to park a vehicle on their driveway without impeding pedestrian access or even overhanging the street. We also carefully review the private roadway street cross sections, as I talked about earlier under the engineering section. And finally, our land development code has parking requirements for each land use, and we review our applications against those parking requirements. Finally, Carl mentioned earlier CC&Rs. These are private covenants that apply to individual subdivisions or neighborhoods and are typically managed by a homeowners association. The county does not have any role in regulating private covenants. So if a neighborhood prohibits you from parking on your driveway, the county does not enforce that. That would be up to the homeowners association. Next slide. So when we're looking at parking in the Parker Triangle, there's a role for the community, and we'd like to hear from you. What would you like to see as far as parking in this area? If you'd like to see the box trucks and semi trucks park elsewhere, where would they go? And are there things that your neighborhood or HOA could do to help? For example, adjusting homeowners association restrictions. Like some HOAs prohibit parking on driveways, other HOAs prohibit commercial vehicles from parking in their neighborhoods. And finally, are there other solutions or concerns regarding parking in this area? If so, we'd love to hear about it, and we have a comment form on the website that you can give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Next slide. The Parker Triangle currently has an application for the former Potter's House Church site, also known as Arcadia. Norris Design is requesting approval for a rezoning on that area that would allow the development of the approximately 32-acre site into 345 apartment units, generally located on the southwest portion of the site, closer to Florida, and 168 paired homes, also known as two-family dwellings or duplexes, although the intent, we understand, is to sell each side of the home to individuals as opposed to renting each side of the home. The site also includes a 5-acre public park and will include a wireless communications facility, also known as a cell tower, which would replace the existing antennas that are mounted on the Potter's House building, which will be demolished if this project moves forward. As part of that development, it's been through one review through county staff, so there is the potential for it to change as we go through multiple rounds of review and the applicant refines their plans based on county feedback. However, on the first submittal, the proposed parking plan exceeds the county's minimum parking requirements. If we don't talk about on-street parking within the development of the proposed development of the Potter's House site, there are approximately 200 spaces in surplus within the development. So that's spaces on the apartment parking lots or in the garage or on the driveways for the two-family homes. They're also building a number of streets within the development, and if you include the allowable on-street parking within the redevelopment area, they are over 400 spaces in surplus. So they will be providing more parking than is required for their proposed density. I will say that the apartments on the west side of the site near Alton are likely to use Alton Street on-street parking where it is legal. Often people find that it's more convenient to park on the street closer to their front door than to wind their way through the neighborhood and then into the apartment parking lot. So I would expect to see Alton Street used as a parking area for some of the folks in the apartments. However, Alton Street does have signage indicating where parking is legal, and as Carl discussed earlier, the parking in the area is largely safe as long as they're following the state parking laws and obeying the signage that is posted in the area. I'll now turn it back to Jim to wrap up.
All right, thank you, Carl and Jason. Great information. And I had a few questions for each of you as we wrap up here. But first, I'd like to say just the next steps here. We're going to post this recording online, and since you watched it, you found it, and then we'll also have an opportunity for you to provide us feedback. So we really appreciate your feedback, as Jason mentioned. So Carl, I had a question for you in regards to the parking study. Part of the FAQs will include this question, but what time did you look at the parking along these roads? Was it just during the middle of the day? Because I don't see a lot of parking during the middle of the day, or did you include other times?
Thank you, Jim. Yes, for that question, there is both AM and PM and weekend counts that we performed to get that parking utilization during those time frames. And we looked to see if there was reoccurring or overnight, if you want to call it overnight parking occurring, and that is reflected in the parking study.
Great, thank you for that, Carl. And like you said, the study is posted on the website, and for all of you that can get to it, we'd recommend that you look through the study. It was well done. So good job, Carl, on that. Jason, I had a question for you in regards to the Acadia proposal here. When is Acadia going to come out to the public so that the public can give comments on the plan?
All right, thank you. They have already held some public outreach meetings, and we expect that they will be going to the Planning Commission sometime in the next several months, most likely after the first of the year, and that's an opportunity for the public to comment on the plan. We also have this proposal posted on our website, arapahoegov.com/planning cases, where you can look at the proposal, and there are contacts for both the developer and the planner in our office. If you have comments about the proposal, you can send them to both the developer and the planner, and we'll be happy to include comments in the record as it moves towards public hearings. And as I said, we expect public hearings sometime in the next several months, likely after the first of the year, and there will be a public opportunity to comment at both the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners.
Great, thank you, Jason. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up our presentation here. Thanks for your time, and thank you too, gentlemen.